it slap.
Before I even start this video, I got a copyright claim on my last video for a sound effect. A sound effect. Apparently that little sound that I used belongs to somebody else. It was 4 seconds long. 4 seconds. When I say someone, I mean a corporation. I didn't even clip a popular song. It was not for music but a sound effect. Seriously, this is what we are doing now. It's actually absurd, and the algorithm, do not even get me started on it. It's like YouTube is just there to make our lives stressful while it laughs all the way to the bank as we try to make content, because 4 seconds, you thought I'm trying to make money off of 4 seconds? What the, can you even 4 seconds? Sometimes I think about how music can literally define whole seasons of your life, and how an artist can embody that season. Like how you hear one beat and suddenly you're back in high school, in a matatu that has neon lights and a TV at the front playing music videos from Channel O. For me, Mulla was one of those groups. They were the soundtrack of being young, broke, and somehow still feeling like the coolest people alive. But when I think about them, I also think about unfulfilled potential. I'm Larizi, and welcome to So let's talk about unfulfilled potential. And to be precise, Mulla, the Kenyan group that had everything. The look, the sound, the hype, the BET nomination. And then just like that, they disappeared. If you were in Nairobi around 2011, 2012, you remember the chokehold that they had on us. Their songs weren't just music, they were vibes. At the time, Kenyan music had its thing. There was Genge, Kapuka, Nameless was running the radio, Ronini was still dropping bangers, Atemi was giving us that new soul vibe, bongo hits from Tanzania was spilling over into our charts. We had an identity, even if it wasn't quote-unquote global in the way Nigerian Afrobeats was already building. And then Mulla came in like, surprise, we're the Nairobi cool kids and we're about to make hip-hop sound expensive. The thing is, it worked. Their music didn't feel fake. It wasn't like rich kids cosplaying ghetto. It was just authentic to their world. It was slangy, playful, trendy, a little bratty. They were middle-class Nairobi teens making music that actually slapped. And we ate it up because, hey, here was a Kenyan group doing hip-hop, and they didn't need to prove their street cred. They blew up fast. Awards, international features. Of course, we talk about the BT nomination, which, let me remind you, was insane at the time. The only other East African artist making that kind of noise was maybe Diamond. I can't remember when Diamond came out, to be quite honest. This was unheard of. Mulla were in fashion spreads, they were on stage, their songs were blasting in clubs in West T, they were on Kiss in the Capitol, whatever. They weren't just artists, they were a moment. And then silence. Just like, your speaker dying mid-banger. So what happened? Short answer, Kenya happened. Long answer, timing, lack of infrastructure, and I guess personal choices. Here's the thing. Kenya has never been short of a sound. We've had Genge, Kapuka, Neo Soul, Gospel, Bongo. There's always variety. What we didn't have, and still don't, is the machinery to take an artist from hype to career. Mulla were basically running like a high school project that suddenly got international attention. They didn't have strong labels, managers with global vision, or long-term investment. Nigeria has that. South Africa has that. Kenya has vibes. And then there was identity. Even within the group, you could feel the push and pull. Do we go mainstream global, polish our sound for outside Kenya? Or do we stay Nairobi, cool, keeping it niche, keeping it a little aspirational? And when Karun left for university abroad, that balance kind of really broke. She was the voice that softened the rap edges, and without her, it's like Voltron missing a piece. It's still powerful, but not the same robot. The other problem, their niche didn't stretch. They were too trendy for the serious hip hop heads who wanted bars, and too cool kids for the mass audience in Kenya outside of Nairobi. That worked in 2012 when everyone was fascinated, but after a while, it kind of boxed them in. And once the hype cooled, there was no ecosystem to catch them. Nigeria has producers, labels, promoters, radio, all building careers. South Africa has the same with festivals and TV and infrastructure. In Kenya, it's like, okay, you've been on the BT red carpet. That's great. Sawa. Next week, come do a show where? Tour how? Live shows? Where? What? Live shows? Because really, that's where musicians make proper money. The only other viable option for the most part is corporate sponsorship. But then now, they own you. But to be fair, they did get corporate sponsorship at the time with Safaricom, and that was really huge. They were doing Safaricom live tours, performing alongside big Kenyan acts, even sharing stages with African heavyweights. But here's the thing, corporate sponsorship isn't the same as industry infrastructure. Safaricom can pay you for a show, put your face on a poster, but they're not a record label. They're not building you a career plan. Once the posters come down and the hype is cool, there's no machinery there's no machinery left to keep the momentum going. Safaricom had their faces everywhere, but still they fizzled out. Not because the talent wasn't there, because the system couldn't hold them. Individually, they all tried. Karun reinvented herself, went abroad, studied music, and came back with a soulful alternative sound. A critically respected underground darling, Tayo, the tripper, he stayed in music, he dropped some solo work, he did collaborations, he was even in production. Shapperman leaned into trap and experimental hip-hop. Usma kept putting out features and singles, and Mike Tony stayed in production. They didn't stop, but as individuals in a broken system, that Mulla magic didn't carry over. Like the Avengers trying to defeat Thanos. Like the Avengers trying to defeat Thanos individually, but, it's much better off. It's easier. It's better. It's faster. Okay. Individually, they don't work, but together, it can. And that's what makes it feel like unfulfilled potential. Not because they lacked talent, but because Kenya wasn't ready to hold them. They were pioneers in a landscape that couldn't sustain pioneers. Imagine if they had come out in 2000 and, 18, 19. The middle of YouTube, TikTok, streaming, and all the DIY tools artists now have. Do you think they would have lasted longer? I think the buzz would have carried on for much longer. For me, it's also personal, because Mulla made you feel like being young and Kenyan wasn't second best to being young anywhere else. They made it look like Nairobi could be the center of the world for at least 3 minutes and 30 seconds on the track, Unfulfilled potential is the saddest because it reminds you of what could have been. Mulla had the vision, the style, the music, but Kenya didn't have the scaffolding to hold them up. And when they fell, it was like the whole dream of Kenya to the world kind of fell with them. At least for a moment. But still, when I hear Party Don't Stop today, it takes me right back. And honestly, for a group that young, that brief, to still matter, or at least even be thought and talked about a decade later, maybe it's not unfulfilled at all. Maybe it's just a different kind of legacy. Anyway, that's my little thought spiral on Mulla. They didn't change the industry forever, but for a hot second, they made us believe. And honestly, sometimes that's enough. They showed us what was possible, even if it didn't last as long as we hoped. I'm Lorizi, and this has been As always, like, share, subscribe, and go and support their individual music. Go listen to Karun, Tayo, Shapaman, Kusma. Yeah, they're all still making music. Support the arts, guys. Okay, thanks. Bye.